My name's Llew Jury. I'm a founder first and foremost. I've done 2 founder-led exits. To date, I'm the general partner and the chairman actually of Sprint Ventures. You need to be sophisticated and appear better than everybody else in the market because it is very, very competitive.
Is that then the advice that you give to founders now? Like, should they be thinking now, what is their exit going to look like and what is the plan for them?
Little tip there is the first thing that I look at when I get very excited when I get access to a data room.
What kind of things are you looking for as an investor to show that a founder is prepared?
So, yeah, I think there's a number of lessons there that I would recommend thinking about if you're at any stage in business, but mainly early stage founders need to know that these are some things that are coming.
I'm Emily, co-founder of Tallystone, and welcome to another Tally Tales.
I was actually talking to a founder the other day about VCs, and I realized that you were actually the very first VC that I'd ever met. And before I could finish, before I could finish that sentence, they interjected saying, "Oh no, like Lou would have ruined you for meeting anyone else because he would have set the bar so high." And I completely agreed with that sentiment, and I wanted you to know that you have this like amazing reputation. Like I still, I've met a lot of VCs since then, and I think you are one of the most authentic and genuinely supportive VC of startup founders. So that's the kind of intro that I always give when someone asks, "Oh, have you met Lou?" But I'd love for you to intro yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Emily, for those kind words. And yeah, look, I think it's a real key thing that it takes more than just me in my VC for Sprint, which I'll come back to. But how I got to Sprint, I suppose, is I'm a founder first and foremost. I've done 2 founder-led exits, we call it, and So my name's Llew Jury, and I'm the general partner of Sprint Ventures, and I'm the founder of Sprint Ventures at the moment. I'm on my 3rd sprint, hence why I named the VC Sprint, and I look at sprints as 10-year sort of episodes, 10-year sprints. My first sprint was Alfresco, and that was in the late 90s, and my brother and I set up that company, and basically it was a web company. We were building websites and some of the early app development for mining companies and big corporates and things like that in the early 90s and the late 90s and the early 2000s. And 7 years to the day, we sold that company to an ASX-based company called WDG, who are part of STW Group, and we sold out just because of a number of things, but it was a lesson to basically do an exit, and I think exits are so important, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in this wonderful forum. I had a couple of years restraint. When you sell to an ASX or a larger commercial organization, they normally sort of say, look, you need to have a bit of time off and you need to not compete with us. So I had a 2-year restraint clause. And then about two and a half years later, I went and set up a company called Reload. And Reload is very well known now. And that was one of the first SEO companies. So sort of I've always done web and app, and then I went and did SEO, which was more marketing tech. We became one of the largest independent Google and Facebook Meta organizations and advertising agencies in Australia. And that digital agency was, when I sold it in late March 2022, that had nearly 100 staff in 4 countries. And I basically had scaled that to the UK, into Asia, and then New Zealand as well, and head office was in Brisbane. So both companies taught me a lot, and then basically in about 2016, I joined up with Peter Ellis, who was on this forum in an episode, and joined her as entrepreneur in residence at River City Labs, and that was an amazing time to go in and start to learn about venture, learn about investing, and learn most importantly about mentoring founders for the future, because founders are everything. And I've been a founder myself. I've got no hair to prove it. Basically, I was a founder. I think that's the earning the stripes. But I think to me, Sprint was a culmination of everything I've done over the last couple of decades, and I've now cornerstone invested myself into Sprint to back in, and we're now up to our third fund, back in the most generational founders that are coming through with amazing business ideas. So today, I'm the general partner and the chairman actually of Sprint. We now have a full team. We have the wonderful Georgia Barkell, who's managing partner, and then we have equity partners. She's an equity partner as well. We have other equity partners within the organisation. So I'm in VC, but I prefer to say that we're T-shirts rather than suits in the VC game, and we've come from that founder-led organisation that we've built our own companies, so we truly know what it's like to be in the trenches every day, having to get out and build customers and build product and build teams and succeed. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Incredible. You've done so much, and it's just amazing to hear all of that. I mean, it's decades of experience. It's great. Now, I want to get into the whole, being in the trenches side to begin with. And I was actually listening to an episode you did on Startup Playbook podcast, where you talked about how, with Rohit, your exit from Alfresco, and how that taught you so much in terms of preparing when you went into Reload. And I was like, I want to hear that story. So I figured that this is a great place to do that. So please, what were those learnings?
Yeah, so I talked to Rohit about that, and we can do a bit more of a deep dive, which is really important. I think the thing I learned from the first business was that you don't know everything in the business, and like I think those first 7 years taught me that you need to mature. You grow up a lot when you sort of I was in the mid-20s, and often startup founders are in around that age. They might be younger, they might be older. I read the other day that the average age of a founder is actually 45, which is quite interesting. But generally, a lot of founders are in those mid-20s, and you really grow up a lot. You mature because suddenly you've got staff, you've got investors, you've got staff, you've got leases, you've got a lot of adult-like requirements to sort of work through and deal with. And I think the first lesson that I learned coming out of Alfresco was you need to really grow up quickly. And the second one was you need to grow up from a business sense. You need to actually enable yourself, no matter what industry or background or market or location or wherever you've come from. All founders are the same. We're all doing the same thing. We're actually trying to get a business to scale, and we're trying to actually build something that is contrarian, that is different to the way of thinking of what's out there, and I think I had to learn a lot of business skills and a lot of tactics. The number one tactic I learned in that business skills segment was sales tactics, and the number one sales tactic I learned was you actually have to pound the pavement. You need to get on the road. And I remember driving my small little Ford Festiva. I had a really, little car, and I had a laminated piece of, a print off. And I actually went out to a place in North Brisbane called Launton, which eventually was where one of my biggest clients was, Super Cheap Auto. But at the time, they weren't my client. But I went and door knocked the whole of Launton, all the way up either side. And I picked up one customer, and it was a trophy shop. And I still remember to this day, it was hot. I had to get out. I had to get in the car and actually physically go in and say why you need a website. This is the days of, this is 1999, this is early 2000. You actually had to convince them not to be in the yellow pages, which a lot of people probably on this forum wouldn't know what that is. But basically the yellow pages, which was just a hard copy, equivalent of Google, but it got delivered on your porch every year. I had to actually say, you need a website because this whole web thing's coming. So pounding the pavement. A lot of founders love building the greatest bit of product. And we sort of did that in our bedroom in St. Lucia. We were in a share house, my brother and I. We're building our website and making it look great. And then we realized there's no customers. We've got to get out there and pound the pavement. And I suppose the third one was building great teams. And I reflected on this with Rohit in that basically it goes, there's two things here. One is that you can't do everything. You're not superhuman. And you very quickly need to work out what your strengths and your allowable weaknesses are. And the most important piece to that statement is the things that are your allowable weaknesses. So I know a bit of finance. I can do spreadsheets. I can do bits and pieces. I know how to do a macro. I know how to do sum. I know how to build a cost benefit analysis. But I'm no whiz with CFO stuff. I understand all the chart of accounts. I've done the chairman's course at the AICD. I understand how to do it. However, I don't have time to do the CFO role in an organization. So I bring in people to do those roles, and then the accountants are happy and the bookkeepers are happy and everybody's happy. So that's a perfect example of knowing your skills. My skills are in sales and networking and doing speaking gigs like this. And let someone else who's really good at spreadsheets and a chart of accounts actually on the day-to-day basis do that. So it took me about 7 years to work out that one. It took me about 7 years to work out that you can't be everything. You can't do every single role. You need to outsource quickly. And I see a lot of good founders these days knowing that very early. They've got a lot of awareness and they actually say, you know what, I'm just going to do this one thing I'm going to sell. And I'm going to let my friend develop and my other friend do the CFO role. And the final piece to that third commentary is around great people. So when you know the skill sets that you aren't good, that you don't want to do on a daily basis. Let's reflect on that. You basically go, right, my first hire is someone to plug that gap, so that basically, everything's going to be developed. So often they hire a CTO or a CFO or a COO these days, which is really popular. So yeah, there's some reflections from my years at Alfresco.
Yeah. And so when, it came time to then exit Alfresco as well, was that something that you took on, or was that not within your wheelhouse? Did you pass it on to someone else? What was that whole experience like going, this is the baby that I've built for 7 years and I'm just trying to sell it to someone else?
Yeah, so we decided to exit because my brother needed to finish his PhD. That was one of the key reasons. I'd done 7 years of hustling for web. We'd done 1,000 websites, and we'd got Super Cheap Auto and Divine Homes. We built the first BCF website. I was in the room when we talked about BCF. They called it boating, camping, fishing, and someone else went, "What about just calling it BCF?" And then they pointed to me and said, "And Llew will build the website." So we'd done everything. We'd not conquered the world, but it was time to do an exit and get some value realization. I think that's a really critical thing. And so the process we went through was quite unorthodox in terms of how we approached the market. What we did was actually guess. We actually lined up. My brother actually worked this out. He sort of said, "These are the sort of guys I want to sell to," and then I sort of did some investigation. We managed to guess the email address of the CEO and basically emailed. He was called Arthur. We have something you might want, and basically that was an amazing thing. He wrote back and said, "Oh yes, what have you got for me?" And we ended up selling our company to him. And so that was quite unorthodox. We didn't have any advisors. We didn't use our accountants to do that. We basically armed our accountants and said, "Look, this is what we're going to do. So get our chart of accounts right, get everything, the three-way forecast looking good, get our P&L looking great." We started to make sure our expenses were good, doing all the basics. Revenue was up every month, expenses sort of looking good, and so you could calculate a rough EBITDA to get some transactional value. And so we did it ourselves. We did all of those negotiations. We flew to Melbourne a lot. They flew up here. There was no broker in the way. The data room was fairly rudimentary, in terms of it was a basic data room that I think it was just probably on a server back then. I forget now. It was very basic, but it was more about they were buying us as humans, and our team. Most importantly, they were buying the team. So the management were briefed in, but not the other staff. So I did an exit there. My brother then stayed on a bit longer, but I exited very quickly, and away we went. So yeah, that was a successful exit.
Yeah. And what did you change when you went into Reload? Like now that you're starting Reload and you've gone through an exit, so you know kind of what the beginning and the end looks like.
Yes.
Did you then approach the beginning differently, knowing what the end goal was this time?
Yeah, so went in with the idea that basically one day we're going to get a value realization here. There was two key things. One was setting it up with family values, that it's founder friendly. Founders first, like Sprint. And basically we set it up with those ideals that if you like any staff member in the future needed to do anything to do with their family or their personal life, go for it. If someone's sick, just leave, go. It's all good. We've got this. So very much we took that through, and that permeates to that organisation today. And it's an amazing thing that when you set it up, you have a bit of that 2020 hindsight, that vision to go, right, I didn't do that at Alfresco properly. I'm going to do this, and when I build this company, I'm going to do that. So that was the first one. The second one was around an exit. And Craig and I, Craig became a key partner of mine, sat in Auckland Harbour in 2010, and out the front of the harbour, we're having dinner, and there was one of the America's Cups boat. I still remember the night. And we'd been setting up our New Zealand office, and we went out for dinner, and I said, you know what, I've got a real plan here. Let's do a 14-year plan, because there was a 14-year age gap between us. And by the way, have some equity. Back then, there was no ESOPs. Back then, there was no cake to manage your platform and do all your ESOPs and all that sort of thing. So basically, what we did was we went back and restructured our company with trusts and set it up properly. Back then, it was Llew Jury with a sort of a consulting company with other bits and pieces hanging off it. It was still Pty Ltd, but we went back and created some real good structures that I still use today. And so basically, set it up with family values. With staff are the most important thing, because they actually will become your succession plan, and then actually do a 10-year sprint. Do a 10-year sprint that gets Llew Jury out of the business. And we actively talked about that I did 7 years for the first one, which ended up being sort of roughly that 8 to 10 years with the restraint. And then I did 10 years, literally pretty much to the day. I started Reload in 2006 as a consulting business, and then really set out that restraint. And in 2008, I set up the Reload Media business, which became the larger business. And then 10 years after that, I then did that. So we actually did what I suppose the benefit of having Alfresco first was we actually said, let's get some value realization. Let's do a 10-year play. Let's do some international work because it's fun. And away we went.
Yeah, amazing. And is that then the advice that you give to founders now? Like, should they be thinking now, what is their exit going to look like, and what is that plan for them?
Totally. One of the key questions that I ask in our investment committee meetings, and we have them every week, is what are your value realization plans? And some of the best founders, I suppose, who are the best probably prepared founders, and this is probably a good tip for a lot of founders, is they understand who they're going to sell to, when they're going to sell, and for how much they're going to sell. Because in the room, it's not just Llew Jury in a T-shirt. There's also an investment committee sitting there, and they're very approachable people. But one thing they do ask on behalf of our LPs and investors is, will this opportunity return the fund, and when will that happen? Because we have a fund life cycle that we have to report back, and also give cash back to our investors. So really important question that we ask really early on, and the most sophisticated founders are the ones that generally get through that gate.
Mm. And I think it's one thing that a lot of founders fail to maybe keep front of mind when they're talking to VCs, is that at the end of the day, you have someone that you're answering to as well, which are the LPs who are investing in, and understanding that relationship probably helps with the dynamic between you and the founders.
Totally. I think that's something in 2024, this year, that I've been talking about a lot, Emily, in terms of to founders, and saying, look, we also have responsibilities to do two things. One is report on our existing funds, Fund 1 and Fund 2, but also we're raising Fund 3. We've actually got to go and ask for money. We've literally got cap in hand as well. Like, you're asking us for money, we're asking our LPs for money, and they're doing the same due diligence process, albeit slightly different, because they've got a 7 to 10 to 12 year window that we're doing together as an investor. They're doing on us. So we were lucky enough this year to secure some Queensland Venture Capital Development Fund money via QIC and Queensland Treasury. And they did about 8 months approximately due diligence on us. And that sort of showed that an institutional grade investor like QIC takes it extremely seriously. We knew they did, but when you go through that process, you truly understand all the elements that they're looking at in terms of the investor.
Has that changed the way you think about due diligence as well? Then, having had that done to you, have you implemented any of that now to the companies that you're looking into?
So Emily, the days that we met, you and I, and you were in at River City Labs, they were the days that actually we were setting up all of that institutional grade, sorry, investment risk standards. So what we were doing there when we were the first VC to be inside River City Labs was basically building the best practice principles of any VC that we'd known in Australia in terms of investment risk standards, and they were institutional grade. So they were processes and documentation and scanning investment memos, reviews, and then full DD documents that were 35, 40 page long. So in a real PE style, we were building all that back in 2019, 2020 into 2021. And that allowed us to go into the QIC process and say, here it all is, knock yourselves out. And have a look. I think others would probably need to play a bit of catch up, but we had it all there ready to go.
Yeah. And I think that's also the exact same experience for a lot of founders, especially. That's why we've started Tallystone, is the whole idea of, rather than scrambling to get everything ready before someone does due diligence, start implementing best practices from the beginning so that you don't have this mad scramble and potentially lose the deal because you're not ready when the opportunity comes along.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, no, that happens all the time.
Yeah. In terms of that being prepared piece, then, for founders, do you have, advice? What kind of things are you looking for as an investor to show that a founder is prepared, other than, what we've already discussed in terms of having a vision for the exit?
I think I should really reflect on the reload story in terms of the exit process that we used for the reload story, because that was more sophisticated. As I referred to before, the alfresco one was my brother Al and I doing the process, guessing emails and doing all that fun stuff back in 2006. And I think that the world has become, that the world of exits and M&A has become much more mature. We've got platforms, we've got data room systems, we've got advisors that are way more sophisticated, and investors, of course, like VCs know how to do exits. So often they sit on the boards and they're advisors, and they know how to guide the founders through. And that's why that's a really good social capital and network capital reason to take on venture investment from some investors, of course, is because they have that experience of doing it. But yeah, if I reflect on the reload exit story, it took 4 years. The number one thing to sort of talk about there is that was a 4 year process from sort of talking about it. How do we get some value realization? How do we actually keep liquidity in this business to allow this business to keep going? And most importantly, who do we exit to leave a legacy? We want to make sure that we leave it to the right people. And the best thing is running a process of time, and running a process of the actual documentation and systems that you use. And so we did that. We did the teasers, we did the IM decks, we did the full data room. We used a platform called Answerata and turned that on because it was quite expensive, but turned it on and allowed us to basically then do a really important thing. And that was see which documents we needed to look at, see what the other potential buyers were looking at and where they prioritized, and then make sure our data rooms were 100%. And when I say 100%, there was nearly 500 documents in that particular data room, from all the staff contracts through to all the bits and pieces that I won't go into in detail, but all the key things that you don't think about. You think it's going to be 30 or 50 documents in 4 or 5 folders. It becomes a behemoth, and managing that process is so important. And we got ready for that. So we started, the management team were part of the exit. So we got them, the general managers, to start building the data room alongside Craig, our managing director. Luckily I didn't have to do too much in there at all. It was a great process, but they did it in terms of time. They spent a lot of time on it. They got it right. And I think that founders need to know that, albeit that was a larger exit to Hardy Grant Media, who are a global organisation out of Melbourne. But basically that was a good indication that you need to get your ducks in a row. You can't do it at the last minute. You can't just download a report and plop it in there. It doesn't look professional. And I think founders need to know that even though they might have 30 documents, not 500 documents, we as venture investors, we look at the level of sophistication that instantly when we see their data room, how sophisticated those founders are. And the little tip there is, the first thing that I look at when I go, I get very excited when I get access to a data room. Maybe there's two things that excite me, Emily. One is financial, annual reports, and I love reading a good annual report. There's nothing better than going in there and looking at the director's report and seeing truly what is going on in their business. The second one, of course, is getting a data room access. And two things. One, the two things that I go to, and you being a lawyer, Emily, would love this. The number one thing I go to is the founder contracts. I go looking for the founder's contract and whether it's up to date. That's number one for me. The second one is the three-way cash flow forecast, P&L. Let's look at your balance sheet, what equity you got, and then of course, what are you doing in the future for your forecasting? So, I might be strange, but I love them. They're two things that I really love.
No, it's interesting that you're looking at both the words and the numbers. I find that there are people who are, words people, so they're, lawyers generally are like this when they're doing due diligence on a data room. They're looking for the contracts and the documents and the story behind it. And there are the numbers people who are normally financial, who are looking at the financial reports and the customers and the churn rates and things like that. But it sounds like you're a bit of both in terms of what you're looking for.
Bit of both, and that's how actually we do Sprint. So we normally have three of us or two of us on the data room, and we divide and conquer. And so basically what we say is, you do the numbers. James currently is doing that for us, and then Chris is doing our contracts and legals, and it works beautifully. They then cross-check each other, and then they provide that report to me, being the chairman of the IC. So it works beautifully to do numbers. And I just want to reflect on that point that you made before about story. It is the story. The first impressions count in the story that you create in your data room. As I said, I'll go back to that word sophistication is really important, because it's how sophisticated the data is and how up-to-date the contracts are, and whether, for example, the contract's been signed. It just shows a level of attention of detail that is mandatory if you want to impress a VC or another sophisticated investor who's running other people's money. That's probably a critical thing. If you've got a couple of high net worths or a couple of angels, then it's slightly different. It's their own money. But as I said at the start of this forum, we're running other people's money. We are obliged to do this in a very critical way, albeit in a way that makes it founder friendly.
We're nearing the end of our time, and I'd really like to know, what advice do you have for, I guess, you're playing in the early stage space, and a lot of the times I think early stage founders think of all of this, whether it's, documentation, attention to detail with governance and finances. They go, oh, well, we're so early stage, we need to be focused on just like the growing this business and getting our product out there and getting customers, and this kind of falls to the wayside. But it sounds like it's as important even in the earlier stage. But what does it look like for that early stage, and what are pieces of advice that you can give to founders, whether they're looking to go to investment now or they've just started and that's somewhere down the track for them?
The first piece of advice, Emily, a really important one, is not everybody needs investment. Not everybody needs a VC or even an angel. The most critical thing in the alfresco business and the reload business when it set up in 2008 there wasn't much VC around. There was, we had product, of course, but it was mainly services-based businesses. So they weren't investable anyway from a today's VC sort of lens. However, not everybody needs it. Like, if you can get a pathway to profitability really quickly, if you can get the break even pathway profitability and all those things happening, that's a great business. It doesn't actually maybe need investment. Maybe later on in a PE sort of setting, private equity setting, which is post venture, which is where Reload sort of did the exit to pay back out the founder, such as myself, after 14 years. Then Absolutely. So the first lesson there is you might not need it. The second lesson that I really would sort of reflect on is, as I said, you need to be sophisticated and appear better than everybody else in the market, because it is very, very competitive. And when I say better, I mean more polished, sophisticated. Cross your T's and dot your I's in terms of the efficiency that you create around not only your data room, but also your personal brand, your story, who you are, and all of that. The third one, I've got two more. The third one is about customers, and customers are everything. And you mentioned before about customers and product. A lot of founders get too caught up in the product side. They try and build too much wonderful product, and they try to go to market with too much product because they are in love with it, and they just keep adding features. But there's a bit of trepidation to actually get out in the market. The best founders can build 10% of what they know is going to be a great platform, and go and sell that 10% to 1 million customers. And that often is one of the key things that we look for in great founders. And the final one is managing cash. Managing cash flow and everything that goes along with that is the number one tip that I'd give anybody at any stage. You need to have a grip on what's going on. You need to understand financial systems and understand what's going on in your business. You can't sort of just lean back on an advisor or someone that's you outsource the CFO or the financial piece to. You really need to own it and lean in on it. And I would, if you need to do a course, or you need to go and get a mentor, or you need to go and get a great accountant, but definitely get a bookkeeper and an accountant that understands you and where you're going on your journey. And I was lucky enough over the years to have great accountants and partners like that, who I'm still with today. I think there's a number of lessons there that I would recommend thinking about if you're at any stage of your business, but mainly early stage founders need to know that these are the sort of things that are coming.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you mentioned that, how having a good bookkeeper or an accountant on your side is exactly what Peter said in her interview as well. So it's clearly
so
an important thing to have in place.
So important. So important. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been so insightful. I could go for a whole nother half an hour and more, but
Same,
I
Emily.
know you're a very
It's been
busy
awesome.
person. Thank you. And if anyone after this would like to reach out to Sprint, whether for investment or to you to hear more about the way you think about these things, what's the best way to reach out?
Best way is sprint.vc, sprint.vc, or search Llew Jury on LinkedIn and reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again. And yeah, I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this video.
Thanks for having me, Emily. It's been great.